welcome to Multicultural Awareness Week 2020. We're very excited to have you here. And we're going to introduce our keynote speaker now. So Bob Sabota is here to do that. Okay. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Corinza. So Tatsala, which is good afternoon in the Nez Perce language. And as Corinza said, welcome to our LCSC Multicultural Awareness Week. And my glasses are getting foggy here. Welcome to our LCSC's Multicultural Awareness Week Wednesday keynote presentation. As Corinza mentioned, my name is Bob Sabota, and I'm the Director of Native American Minority Veteran Services here on campus. I have the honor and privilege of introducing our presentation and keynote speaker. And so on behalf of the LCSC and our Multicultural Awareness Week Planning Committee, I'd like to begin by stating we, Lewis Clark State College, acknowledge and honor the original inhabitants of the land the college is upon, the Nimiipuu Nez Perce people, original caretakers since time immemorial, and recognize their continuing connection to the land, water, and ancestors. We affirm our commitment and deep appreciation and respect for the ongoing relationship built and sustained between Lewis Clark State College and the Nez Perce tribe. Today's presentation is titled Cultural Competencies Through Commonalities with Mr. Jeff Guillory as our presenter. Although Jeff's biography and background is huge, I'd like to provide you with just a brief glimpse of his work and experience. Jeff's a University of Idaho graduate, recently retired as the Director of Diversity Education Program for the Division of Student Affairs and Office of Equity and Diversity at Washington State University. His unique and compelling history includes growing up in Houston, Texas during the 50s and 60s before attending the U of I as a student athlete with their football team. Jeff has over 20 years of experience as a diversity educational professional, 10 years as human resource professional, and over 20 years as a consultant for major companies and organizations in many different fields, including organization development, conflict management, and cultural competency. He's worked with a wide range of groups that includes colleges and universities, Washington State Senate staff, over 50 Native American organizations, local Idaho government agencies. The philosophy and theme on which Jeff bases his work is, we have more things in common than our differences. When he's not working, Jeff enjoys reading, horseback riding, camping, family and church activities. Jeff resides in Lapwai, Idaho on the Nez Perce Indian Reservation with his wife, Connie. And he has 4 beautiful children. Rick, his oldest, is a military veteran and works for the Nez Perce tribe. His son, Raphael, professor at Eastern Washington University. Justin is the president of Northwest Indian College. Yeah. Bernice is a doctor.
Can you repeat for the interpreter to hear the last couple of comments?
So just want to welcome Jeff and thank him for this opportunity to come and share with us. So thanks.
Thank you.
And if you're just joining us, it would be lovely if you make sure that your microphone is turned off for us, please, so that we can just be fully present for our speaker today. So let's just make sure, just double check your microphone for us. Thank you so much. Welcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, be sure and mute those mics because we can hear everything you're saying. So anyway, glad to be here. Thank you very much. We're going to talk about job-related diversity education today. We're not going to get so much involved with current events because we don't want to get into that circular argument type thing that everybody's gotten themselves into. My aim today is to make poignant references to race and culture and diversity as it relates to your job careers. Okay. We're not gonna, and I may be disappointing some of you, but we're not gonna get into a lot of the things that are happening on the streets today. We see enough of that every day. So what we're gonna do is talk about job-related diversity issues and how you're going to need to be well-informed about this issue for one reason, and I want you to listen to this carefully. In order to qualify for today's current professional level jobs, one of the questions that's going to always be asked as a requirement is how well versed are you with working with people from other countries and other backgrounds, other cultures. In order to get a job, not only are you going to have to be able to be qualified for that job, but you're going to have to demonstrate a working knowledge of other cultural values, norms, and experiences. Does that ring a bell with people? Does that make sense? Okay, it's a requirement now. If you're going to go to work for Providence Hospital, Seattle Police Force, the Forestry Service, Athletic Department, the first thing that happens in your interviews, they can tell me about your experience with other cultural values, norms, and languages and things of that nature. If you don't have that experience, 9 times out of 10, you will not get that job because you're working with a lot of people today. And so what I'm going to do is test you. I'm not going to give you a lot of things that you already know, the definition of discrimination, the definition of racism and all that stuff. I'm going to throw you into the mix. I'm going to put you in the middle of situations that happen in today's society that's happening now. 30 years of working at WSU, I've had colleagues in the Pac-12 that do what I did. We were all diversity education directors. And whatever hotspots or situations would come up in their area, Stanford, University of California, UCLA, places like that, we would exchange information. Well, here's a situation that happened at the hospital that involved a patient and a doctor who were from different cultural backgrounds. And this is how it was resolved, okay? Those are the scenarios that we exchange with each other and we've written down, and we hand those out in the past when we could connect. We'd hand those out to students who would form groups and would resolve those situations themselves. Now, we had the answers to them, but you are the ones that have to resolve them. That same kind of exercise is being done today at Boeing, at Microsoft, and Amazon. When you interview for a job, they'll give you situations. So let's see if you can resolve this. It'll be job related to that company. And if you can't, they'll know immediately. You have no training or no experience in this work. So we've taken what Boeing has done, some of their examples in their interview process, and we're going to give them to you now. Isn't it better to do it now rather than graduate and wait and find out later that you don't know anything about this kind of process? Well, that's what we're going to give you today. Okay, we're going to set this up with some questions about perceptions, basically how you see the world now. Where are you coming from in terms of your perception of the world and your idea about different cultures, different race, and even your own background? Sorry. Okay. All right. So I just want you to give you a little bit of background about myself. I maybe read about the Civil Rights Act, 1964 Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, segregation in the South, and all of that stuff. Everybody familiar with that information? I didn't read it. I lived it. I'm 72 years old. I have all my teeth. But anyway, I lived it. I grew up in segregation in the segregated South. And so what I'm about to tell you comes from my own experience of going through this kind of stuff. So I am, just so I can say this, I am qualified to talk about this stuff because I lived it. I came through that era. Okay, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Then we're going to get into a little bit about yourself. We're going to start with introductions. I'm only going to do 2 or 3 because of time. You notice when they introduce me, God, I have a tendency to walk around, so I can't. I got to stay here. When they introduced me, how did they introduce me? How did Bob introduce me? He gave information about what I did for a living, right? What if I ask you, what's your name, sir?
Peter.
Peter? Peter, I want you to introduce yourself again to everybody, but I want you to tell them who you are without telling them anything that you do. Now, stuff that you do involves school, right? Don't tell them, we don't want to hear anything. And I think about if I was asking you that question. This is a question that Amazon sometimes asks individuals. So tell me who you are, but don't tell me about anything that you do. How would you answer that question?
At this point in time, I really don't think I could.
Okay, it's tough. Can anybody take a shot at it? Can you tell me who you are without telling me about anything you do? I don't want to know about your job or school, but who are you? Well, the reason why I asked that question, and the reason why companies ask that question is because some cultures, and Native American cultures will do the same thing. If you introduce yourself to a Nez Perce elder, the first thing they will tell you is who they are, not what they do. They'll say, I'm the daughter of so-and-so Half Moon. My people are, my family name is, my Indian name is, that's who they are. They're not concerned about what they do. So if you're introducing yourself to a person from the Middle East, and they do the same thing, and they ask you, who are you? And you're there to conduct business for Amazon or for a health organization, how are you going to respond? If they tell you all about themselves, their tribe, their language, where they come from, their music, the type of food that they have in their culture, and then they give you a chance to respond, how are you going to respond? What do you know about your culture, your history, your ancestry, your people? Where do they come from if they were from Germany, Ireland, Europe? What's the village that your family came from? What language did they speak? What customs did they have? What foods did they serve? What dances did they have? What songs? Do you know any of that? So if you're going to do business with people in another country, and they're willing to tell you all about themselves, but you can't respond, why should they do business with you? We warm up our cars in the morning in the wintertime. Why can't we warm up conversations with people in the same way by telling them basically who we are? Number one, find out who you are so you won't be caught off guard. People will ask you that. When you leave this place and you're in a hospital and you've got to deal with a patient or professional from a different country, they're going to open up with telling you who they are. They're proud people. Now, many Americans open up with this one. Well, I'm an American. Okay, but she's from Brazil. She's an American too. Or he's from Nicaragua. He's an American too. South American, Central American, North American. Which American are you? It's not enough to just say, I'm an American. Who are you? And I'm not saying don't tell people I'm not American. I'm not saying that. But we don't hold a monopoly on that title. You have to understand that. There are other people from other Americas. Follow me? I'm not trying to insult you. I'm just telling you the facts. Okay? You have to study this stuff. All right. I could get into more of that, but again, I got to get you into these scenarios first. Okay. Next, I'm going to recite 6 statements. And in your mind, or you can write it down on a piece of paper if you like, you're going to give me a one-word answer to this statement. This comes from an interview test by the Bayer industry. How many of you have heard of Bayer Corporation? Okay, this is one of theirs. So it's job related. Now I'm going to go kind of fast, so you're going to have to write the one-word answer down quickly. I'm not going to give you time to think, and there's a reason for that, and I'll explain it later. First question. A Mexican immigrant dressed in khakis and a t-shirt unlocks the door of a CEO's office late one evening carrying a bucket and a broom, and he walks in. Who is he? Next. A woman of middle age is dressed in blue, and she's walking through the hallways of a local hospital. Who is she? Next. A well-dressed woman thanks passengers for flying on a famous airline as they exit the plane. Who is she? Next. A Native American man stands before a judge in a court of law. As he stands there, standing next to him is a police officer and a man dressed in a three-piece suit carrying a briefcase. Who's the Native American? Next. A well-dressed man stands over a woman who's seated at a desk and hands her a memo to critique. He's wearing a white shirt and tie, and he hands her a memo to critique for him. Who's the man? Next. A white man with a shaved head is marching in a parade in northern Idaho with an army jacket on, carrying a flag. Who is he? Quickly. Pencils down. This is not a test. It's not right or wrong. It's there to show you what your first impressions are with very limited information. If you're walking down a sidewalk in the school here, and a young woman walks past you and she's 6'5", without even processing a thought, what's your first impression more than likely will be? Come on. Anybody? Basketball? Is that logical? Most people would probably think, without even processing, basketball, right? Now, you may want to stop and say, do you play basketball? And what if she says, I don't know what basketball is. I'm from Switzerland. I'm just a student. How does that make you feel? You know, maybe I should have given it some thought before I made a decision. How many times did we make snap decisions with our first impression and we're totally wrong? Totally. How about every day? How about all of us every day, you know? Rather than saying, I'm gonna take a deep breath. I know what my first thought is here. Anyway, let me go through my answers. Again, it's not right or wrong. And then you just look at yours, okay? And if anybody want to ask questions, you can. Answer to number one. He's a CEO. Number two, she's a doctor. Number three, she's a pilot. Number four, he's a lawyer. Number five, the man with the white shirt and handed the woman, he is the clerical help. Number six, he's a cancer patient. Or he could be military. What's my point here? Not right or wrong, but we have an involuntary response to our first impression every day. We can't escape it. It's just there. We're conditioned to think of things as they are sort of taught to us by our first impressionists. And who's our first impressionists as little children? Our parents, grandparents, people like that. All right? So, as we get into some of our scenarios now, I want you to keep in mind that you have a first impression, and it will dominate your thought, your first thought. But I want you to take a deep breath and say, okay, I know what I'm thinking here. What else can be going on besides my first thought? How many of you saw the movie Hidden Figures? the black ladies who work for NASA and the woman who happened to be clerical help, but they found out later that she was a genius. Remember that? And Kevin Costner brought her into the office and he said, we've got to find a way to get a trajectory for these astronauts so they can get back to Earth without burning up. And we don't have a formula for that. And she said, well, maybe I can help. And the other guys, it was all men, right? They said, oh, she doesn't know anything about it. And Costner says, well, I tried to have you guys help me. But we need to find an answer where there is no answer. We need to find a formula where one doesn't exist. And she came up with one. What I'm here to do is not just lecture at you. I want to hear answers that doesn't exist. We are in a society today where you are the people who are going to make the change, make the difference. Your group will be the ones to make the difference in this country. So we need answers that do not exist right now. When I put these scenarios before you, and I'm going to make them job specific, I don't want you to just sit there and mull it over. I want you to yell out and make mistakes. And if you think it sounds silly, fine, but I want to hear from you. We need answers. And these are situations that happen today, yesterday, maybe last year. But if we are not participants in the process, then we're part of the problem. Okay? Any questions so far? Let me do one more quick sort of example for you to give you an idea of how you're going to have to come up with answers that don't exist. Everybody with a pencil or pen, draw a Roman numeral 9 on a piece of paper for me. Just a Roman numeral 9. Okay, I saw that. Now, who in here doesn't remember the fourth grade Roman numerals? Come on.
I had to think a little hard on it.
I know you did. It's a 1 and an X, college students. Jesus.
And professor, I had to.
A 1 and an X, Roman numerals. Oh my God, I can't believe that. Okay, we have it down. Now, I'm going to say something here that's going to make you feel really weird inside. 6th graders get this right every single time, and there's a reason for that. And I'll explain it in a minute. Within the next 10 seconds, with one line, I want you to change that Roman numeral 9 to a 6. Begin. I got my eye on the clock. Pencils down. Who think they have it? Let's see your hands. I got 1. 1. 1. Okay, I got 2. She kind of, yeah. Now you can try this at home or with your brother or sister, whomever. The young ones, they'll get it right every time. Those of you who have it, let's see your hands again. What'd you do?
I put an S in front.
Hear what she said? She put an S where?
In front of the.
Right in front. Everybody do that. I can hear the back. I can hear people on the thing going, oh gosh. See how simple that was? Why was it so difficult? Why do you think it was so difficult? Come on.
Yeah, we're trying to make a Roman numeral 6.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you want to step? You can keep talking up here. He's just going to try to get you.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, that's okay. What, say again?
I was trying to make a Roman numeral 6.
You're just trying to make a,
But Jeff, I'm going to stand right in the middle.
Can I walk
Yeah,
out there?
You can.
Oh,
Yep,
great, I'm
almost
free,
done.
yes. Okay. Well, the reason is, when we're young people, you know, like younger than age 12, well, maybe a little younger than that. We're freewheeling kids, right? We do anything. How many of you have little brothers and little sisters? You will not take them anywhere with you because they're liable to do anything, right? They have this unfiltered behavior. No limits. So if you told a 6th grader or a 5th grader, to do the same exercise, automatically they think of a squiggly line. We're taught to be linear thinkers. Everything has to have its sequential path. If I write a formula for an equation, it has a sequence. Logical thinking, straight line. So if I say to you the word line, what's the first thing you're going to think of? A straight line, right? When you deal with people from other cultural backgrounds and vice versa, people from China deal with Caucasians in this area, you can't think in a straight line. You have to be willing to think in loops and spirals. You have to sort of become a child again and learn things that are different, that you're not used to, that your sixth sense, maybe third sense, whatever, because I'm not comfortable with that. But if you're going to learn to deal with people on an international basis, even in this country, you have lots of people with different languages, different cultures. We are indeed a melting pot. From a business point of view, you're going to have to be able to deal with that. All right? So from this point on, with that in mind, I am going to challenge you with real life scenarios. And you're going to either be able to deal with it, or we can work it out right now. Because when you graduate and you finally apply for a job at what's the name of the hospital in Seattle? Virginia Mason, the big hospitals, police departments, forest service, physician jobs. I did this same exact process at the Elton Floyd Medical Center in Spokane with a room of doctors. Same thing. They had the same difficulties. Okay, but these were physician-patient related issues, and I have a couple of those for you, so you can see how you do with those. Is that okay? We're gonna get to it in just a second here. Well, let me do it this way. Yeah, you stay where you are. Let me grab this. Okay, go. Any questions before we get started? Any expectations? Does anybody have something as you were walking in here and say, God, I'd really like to know the answer to that question today. Maybe if I get a chance, I can ask it and find out. There are no unusual or dumb questions in this business. Anybody have a question? Just a simple question. Just anybody has questions about it? Yeah, go ahead.
Is the goal when you're meeting new people to like block out the first impressions, like?
No, you don't block out first impressions. You use them as fodder. For instance, if a person is Asian or Latin American, you already have preconceived notions about who they might be. The question is, put that aside, okay? It's there. Just put it aside and act as though you have no idea who this person is, rather than lead with that first impression. I'm going to give you a couple of those examples, that are real examples, that's going to test that same question. And I'm telling you, you'll find out your first impression is powerful. It is really, you can't escape it. It's there. Grandma, grandpa, great-grandma, they taught you that stuff. I played football 100 years ago at the University of Idaho. And I told you, Texas is segregated. Well, a couple of my buddies wanted to go home with me to find out what it was like down there. So I went home very quickly, and I took a couple of buddies with me, white guys, and they met my dad. I grew up with this guy, thinking that, okay, we went through slavery, we went through segregation and lynching and all that stuff. This guy knows what's going on. He treats people fairly. The moment he saw my white friend from the University of Idaho, he took me to the side and he says, why do you have this guy here? I said, Dad. He says, I don't want those people in my house. I said, what are you talking about? All the crap that we went through. My first impressions, my dad wasn't prejudiced. But he was. sometimes it's tough for us to see reality or at least face up to it. He was a child of his time. How many of you have parents and grandparents that are children of their time? There's nothing you can say to them to make them think otherwise, right? They're not bad people. They were just conditioned in that era. So you have to deal with that on the basis of your first impression. Okay, so I'm gonna take my dad anywhere. You know, that's how I'm gonna handle that. Some of you know what I'm talking about. You go back home and you go back to the old way of thinking and talking. But when you fast forward to today and you've got to deal with the rest of the world, you have to sort of put that aside, not hate them or resent them, but put that aside and deal with the world the way it is. Does that make sense? Do I have an argument from people on that score? That's the way the world is. You have to deal with it as it is, but you have to live your own life based on your experience, your knowledge, your understanding. Parents and grandparents may get ticked off at you. How did you? My dad did that to me. Sorry, Dad. You know, these are my friends. We play football together. See you later. So, here we go. Here's the first one. Again, these are real. These aren't contrived, made up. They actually happened. I have the answer for you. When I read this, I'm going to give you anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes, depending on your how you deal with your first impression. Write down a quick answer or some answers, then we'll discuss. Now remember, if you have an opinion that differs from somebody else in the room, defend your opinion. I don't want you to say, oh, okay, that's a decent answer, I'll go with that. No, if you believe something else, defend it. All right? Okay, here we go. An elderly Chinese woman is asked by her physician to go to the laboratory to have a blood draw for tests. She stares at the doctor for a moment, takes the laboratory slip, but does not get the test, nor does she return to see the physician. Discuss a different approach to this patient. I'll give you 5 minutes. I can read it again if you like. That's all the information I'm going to give you.
Yeah, can you read it one more time?
Okay. An elderly Chinese woman is asked by her physician to go to the laboratory, go to the lab, to have blood drawn for a test. She stares at the doctor for a moment and takes the laboratory slip, but does not go to the lab to take the test, and she does not return to see the physician. What approach would you use to deal with this? 2 minutes. I'll give you 2 minutes. What are your considerations? What are your first impression, and what are your considerations?
Yeah, Linda, are you able to hear him?
The interpreters are able to hear the speaker.
Okay, thank you.
They are.
Okay, he doesn't need to move back behind the podium.
It would
So
be
far, so
better.
good.
Okay, thank you so much.
Who needs more time? Okay, let's go with it. You're the physician. Something just happened with this patient. First question I'm going to ask you, what are your cues here? What are your cues? What's your What's your first alarm here? What's got your attention first? Yes.
She doesn't acknowledge the request very well. She just kind of stares at him, which may indicate that she doesn't know what he's asking her to do.
Great first impression. Yes.
I was thinking maybe, I don't know too much about like Chinese religion and everything, but I don't know, maybe blood work or something is not allowed, or they might do something else in back home in their country.
Beautiful. That's great stuff. I like that. Go ahead, please.
Maybe she understands exactly what's going on, but just prefers not to.
That's an option, yes.
I'm sorry, this is the interpreter speaking. Can the student speak up just a little bit so I can hear a little bit better, please? Thank
The
you.
students? I don't know what to do about that. She says the students talk.
Maybe you can repeat what they're saying just real briefly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, two responses that I have is that, number one, I think you said she.
You want to repeat yourself?
And she might not necessarily understand what the doctor is asking her.
She may not understand what the doctor's asking because of her culture, her language. And blood work may be something that they don't do in her culture, all right? Excellent. Let's hear from the doctor back there. Anything?
I had similar answer to him.
Okay, all right.
So now,
Anything else anybody want to add? Yes.
I was thinking.
I didn't get that comment. I'm sorry.
The gentleman in the back with the cap on said he agrees with this young man right here. Okay? All right? And so we have another comment coming up. Go ahead, please.
She's scared to find something out.
She may be afraid of what the test might reveal. That's true. All of that's true. Anything else? Anything else that is sort of off the grid? Both of you are right. First of all, and you said, your first impression was great. By her not saying anything is a cue. That's a message in itself. Says she stared at the doctor for a moment and then takes a sip and leaves. That stare was a communication. Okay, that's where you have to sort of put your own thoughts aside about why she's staring and just think, there's something wrong here. Maybe I better investigate further. Does that make sense? The doctor did and found out that in her country, how many of you know that there's more than 50 different ethnic groups in China? Yes, there's not just one, everybody speaks Chinese. There's all kinds of languages, cultures, I mean, completely different cultures in northern China, southern China, everything, horseback, the Mongol people. Anyway, in her group, and I can't remember exactly what her group was, the taking of blood is the sapping of life from your body. When you take blood from people, you're literally taking life from them. And it scared the hell out of her. When the doctor found out through an interpreter that this is what her problem was, he found somebody to talk to her and let her know that it was safe. Someone from her own culture and background. She came back and got the test. Had he not examined his own first impression, said, well, she don't want the test, so there's nothing I can do about it, moves on to the next patient. That happens. Happens more than you think. Today's physicians, male or female, have to be cognizant of what are the messages that are taking place culturally, as opposed to just something on the surface. That make sense? Be aware of that, even in school. Cues from people. And let me give you a great example of how cues can be a wonderful way to communicate misunderstanding or a lack of knowledge. We Americans speak 2 languages all day long. We speak English and we speak another language all day. And many times we're not aware of our second language. How many of you know what our second language is?
Is it nonverbal communication?
Nonverbal is sort of universal, but there's one specific language that we use. We speak it all day long.
Is it body language?
No?
Is it the slang that you use?
Say again?
Is the slang right?
Slang language. We speak slang language. Now imagine if you just came to America and you just learned English, right? Well, let me give you a better example. This happened to me at University at WSU. A friend of mine named Muhammad had just come to this country and he just learned English. And he was walking on the mall toward me, and I just happened to see him. I said, Muhammad, what's up, man? You know what he did? He stopped in the middle of the mall and he looked straight up at the sky like this. I said, Muhammad, what are you doing? He said, hi, Jeff, but what is up? Funny, right? He was completely lost. And then I remembered, here's a guy who has to translate twice all day long. So ask yourself this question. How often during the day you speak to people that you know have a second language and may not understand slang, and you speak slang to them all day? What's going on, man? Sounds simple enough, right? Well, where are we going? What are we going on? And you say, oh, come on, you know what I mean? No, they don't. When you're a professional, you're in a hospital, or you become a professional, try real hard to speak plain English and not slang, because it throws people off. And most people who don't understand slang, they'll do what? You said, do you understand? They go, yeah. Mm-hmm. How many of you seen that? Yeah, I understand. Mm-hmm. When they don't. So ask professionals, and you'll find this out later because it's going to be on your job description. Under job expectations, you don't know about that yet. Speak plain English, no slang. You'll see that, and you'll go, God, how am I going to talk now? You know, because you guys, and we did too, we had our own slang language, right? So, I don't know, what is some of the slang you guys use today? We had the word cool, dig it, stuff like that. My grandchildren laugh at me, but anyway, get the idea. 2 Mexican-American police officers were visiting in a break room when a non-Spanish speaking officer overheard them speaking their language. The fellow officer cleared his throat to get the attention of the other 2 men who were speaking their language. And he said, hey, why don't you guys speak English like everybody else here? It's rude to be living in America, call yourself an American, and refuse to assimilate. Speak English. So these 2 guys were offended. And they took the complaint to you, their captain. You got 2 minutes to come up with a solution to this problem. Okay, it looks like they're still have people writing. All right, Captain, all of you are the captain of these 3 men. The captain happens to be female. Not that that makes any difference, but she is. She's the captain. So this is reported to you, and you want to make sure there's harmony in the workplace. So what are you going to tell these 3 men? Can we hear from the Zoom audience?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Say, any Zoom people, go ahead and write your responses in the chat.
Yeah, any Zoom people, write your responses and we'll see what you have, okay? In the meantime, it's a tough one. We hear about this a lot, so we want to hear your answers.
I mean, first, I
Give it
would
a shot. Give it a shot. I don't care about the answer thing. You might think they're wrong. Let's just hear it.
like first I would kind of look into like the background of like the police officer that says something,
Okay.
because you never know, like you said, you don't know where he's from or like what he was taught as a child. And then I would probably try to bring him together and more like inform him that like that isn't okay. Like they're American just like you. They're a citizen. They pay taxes just like you.
Okay.
So that isn't. They have the right to speak in their own way they want to.
Okay.
They're speaking to each other.
Okay. Now, let's try to make it job related. Does that make sense? What you say is fine. You talk about people's rights, that's fine. But when we make it job related, it's much more structured, I'll just put it that way. Yes?
Explain to them that as long as they can speak perfect English that's understandable while they're on their job, that's fine. But if they're in personal hours, they can speak however they want, but whatever they want.
Okay, all right, that's fair. That's fair, as long as they're on a break, or even if they're not on a break, they happen to be chatting in the hallway with each other. But it's still offensive to people. And you guys know what I'm talking about. A lot of people are offended by that. You see lots of examples of that online. People just challenge people right in the grocery line. If they're speaking to the cashier with an accent, or they may use a different language.
So someone online wrote, find out what is required in the job.
It is required in the job.
They're saying right here on the site, so find out what is, required of the job, like is it
Find
part of
out
the
if it's
requirement?
required, if it's required in the job. To speak English, I assume. Okay. There is, in some jobs, it is, English is, plain English is required. If it involves what? Health, safety, you have to speak English in certain jobs. You have, at EMT, we have an emergency, you can't speak a different language, you gotta speak English, right? So there are requirements. But in this particular situation, what's the problem? The problem is simple, it's just a lack of understanding. How many of you have taken a trip out of the country and gone into a country in which you did not know the language? How many of you? See, show of hands. Where did you go, sir?
Mexico.
How did you order food?
I went with one of my buddy's family and she spoke.
What if they weren't there?
Yeah, it probably would have been.
Be difficult, right? Okay. How would you get transportation without any help?
Now that you have technology, you probably could look stuff up,
Yeah.
simple questions, but yeah, I don't know.
Be pretty tough. And you had your hand up? Where'd you go?
No, I was on a deployment.
Okay.
He had an interpreter with us.
You had an interpreter, which, okay.
We have people online too. So Andy said there's not intentionally excluding of the other guy. They were on their break, and as long as they aren't breaking any rules, they're
Okay,
fine.
that's a logical answer, but there are people who take it personally as Americans. They don't want to hear that. But when you put an American or whomever in their place them in France or Mexico, and you can't speak the language, and you struggle all day long to communicate, that's a lot of work. And suddenly you find somebody with whom you can speak English. And it's like breathing. You don't have to work to interpret, you just talk, right? So the reason people speak their language as often as they can with someone who knows the language is very simple. Okay. It's not to embarrass Americans. We don't give up money, so we're gonna speak our language to make every American feel crazy. It's just simply because it's easier. That's all. That's all. Yes, they can speak English, but we don't have to think about it to speak our language. It's just easier. It's just like taking a breather. You're in Mexico, you run into somebody that speaks English, oh, thank God. Somebody can speak English, and you just start flowing, right? It's the same thing. There's no conspiracy. People aren't speaking that language just to force other Americans to speak their language. It's not true. If you've ever gone to another country or in another environment in this country, I grew up in Houston, but my people are French Creole. They come from the Boot Heel of Louisiana, where they all speak Creole French. And you go down there, you know, and you have to have an interpreter. But I can speak a little bit, so I don't have to worry about it. There are people in this country who speak Italian. You go to some places in New York, you go in Little Italy, you can't speak Italian, you have a hard time. Other people in this country as well. Okay. So when you get a job and you become a manager or a director or a supervisor, and you run into this situation, and you will, please keep that in mind, that the reason people speak another language, and I'm not saying that it's perfect. Yes, people speak a different language sometimes to talk about you behind your back. Yeah, well, we do, don't we? But it's not abnormal. That's only the point I'm making.
And
All right.
Jeff, I would just point out, though, there's another comment from
Okay.
Erica Allen. So note that we appreciate having bilingual staff because they're able to connect with non-English speaking client and help bridge the connection between the officers and community. We had some agreements, and then also people who are traveling. So someone who had gone to Turkey, Japan, and China, and someone who commented there wasn't English anywhere other than the airport, it felt like. So kind of that isolation you're talking about.
Yeah, right.
And Naomi actually saying also that I felt that. And so I think she's referencing.
Wonderful
that, so.
answers, you guys. We really appreciate that. Great stuff. I really appreciate that.
And we have 41 people online, so please, keep putting, we'll include your discussion. So as he throws out scenarios, please write your comments and respond as well and share those ideas. So thank you.
And if you disagree, put that down too. We'd like to see that as well. So we don't exclude anybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, next. These get progressively, we only have about 20 minutes, okay. These get progressively a little bit harsher because of real life. Is that fair? We're going to go to athletics now. You are a college coach, all of you. What college coaches do is recruit. They go all over the country looking for recruits. Women in volleyball, baseball, all kinds of sports, basketball, men and summer sports. When you walk into somebody's home to recruit their kid, you walk into their environment, their home culture, if you will. And you have to be prepared with what you'll hear, see, and sometimes get involved in. Anybody in here ever been a recruiter? You have no idea. Talk to a recruiter, one of these college recruiters one of these days, and ask them some of the situations they've had to do with in relation to race, culture, and those kind of categories. Here's one that happened at a California school. A college coach is having dinner for the heavily recruited blue chip football athlete. Blue chip means top of the line, world-class athlete. He's having dinner with a heavily recruited blue chip football athlete and his parents in California. They're in a restaurant making friendly conversation. The coach commented that the neighborhood was very clean and quiet and seemed ideal for raising a family. The father of the student athlete responded by saying, pretty much all the neighborhoods in town are fine. We try to keep the niggers and the Mexicans out of our city limits to keep it that way. How do you respond to that comment as a coach? How do you respond? Now, this is a real situation that actually happened. I have the answer and how this was resolved, but I want to hear from you. 2 minutes. You're the coach. What do you do? Okay, for the sake of time, we're going to ask you to answer the process now. We only have about 15 more minutes, so I have a ton of these. We could do this all day. But unfortunately, we have just about 15 more minutes to do this one. You're the coach. You're you're in the spotlight. How do you respond when a parent says something like this to you? What do you do? What do you do? Anybody? You start talking. I know it's tough. It's a tough situation, but it happens more than you think.
I would just say change the conversation at that point. Or just try to change the conversation and then tell the conversation probably.
Okay, that's a great point. You can go anywhere with that idea. Sure, you can. But where direction do you go from here? Change the conversation. Do we have anybody up here?
We do.
As coach, I would say this is Delaney Warren. Is that right?
Mhm.
Okay, or is that backwards? Okay. As a coach, I would say that the university strives itself in its diversity, so that type of thinking would align with what the school is looking for in an athlete. I think I read that right. I agree with that. I also agree with this gentleman here. But isn't this the parents thinking, not the athlete? Yes, you're right there. Hi, Bill. I see Bill there. Bill Hain, my good friend. Discuss my philosophy as a coach. Bill was a coach of athletes from all walks of life and backgrounds are a part of my team and life on our campus. I would hope that you and your son will leave that thinking at home. We'd like to have your son play with and for us, but you'll all need to come to terms with him being in a newer environment, meaning their son, with dignity and respect for all, and our underlying theme of competing. Okay, Bill makes sense. The parent says, I don't care about that. Okay, I don't care about that. I just want to make sure my son isn't involved with too many so-and-sos. Okay,
I'd probably move on.
what's that?
I'd probably move on.
Move on?
Yeah.
Okay, you have that option to say, okay, nice talking to you, and leave. Here's what the coaches did. He reaches in his briefcase, takes out the non-discrimination policy of the university, and hands it to the parent. And he continues talking about recruiting his son. Never breaks stride. Just hands him the policy and continues talking. He never engages about this parent's opinion. Never get into a circular argument with an opposing opinion of a parent, especially on their turf. You get in trouble. Stay businesslike, don't argue, introduce the university's policy or college's policy in writing, and move on. In this case, that's what happened. They finished the conversation without even engaging the parent or challenging them in any way. Talk to the young man separately. This particular young man says, yes, I'd like to go to university. Just so happens that my high school is integrated. My parents, they disagree with it, but anyway, long story short, he accepted the scholarship, end of story. Sometimes you will be challenged this way, folks, in your profession. Be professional. You have an opinion, you have a first impression. Keep it to yourself. If it's job-related information or job-related discussion, be professional. Okay, does that make sense? Have any argument? Well, I don't believe that. I would challenge that parent. You lose your credibility and you damage the brand of the university by doing that. Protect your brand. Protect LCSC, your coach. Because parents are message carriers. They'll say, do you know what that coach from LCSC said? Follow me? You have to really be careful as a professional. Any other comments here?
Nope.
Okay. Any comments here? Let's move on. Okay. Forest Service It's common practice for the staff and the Forest Service to invite new employees to lunch to get acquainted with them. A Vietnamese American by the name of An Tran accepted the invitation by the Forest Service representative and joined a group of employees for lunch to get acquainted with them. Now, during the lunch meeting, one of the employees named Dan complimented on how well he spoke English and how Dan's wife enjoys doing business with the local fingernail shops in town. Another employee for the Forest Service mentioned that he read stories about the war in Vietnam and how great it was to see progress between the two countries. Now, following the lunch meeting, An, the new employee, became noticeably withdrawn for the rest of the evening. What might have upset An? I'm not going to even let you, give you a minute to write this one out. Think about an answer on top of your head. Put the S on the Roman numeral 9. What's going on here? Go ahead.
Discussion of the war.
Discussion of the war?
Yeah.
Okay.
His family could have been affected by it.
Okay. Anything else?
What was that comment?
Discussion of the war was a comment. What else is going on?
Wasn't he implying that that he was surprised how well he spoke English?
Yes. First impression. What else? Yes.
Pointing out how he was somehow related to the Vietnamese fingernail shops.
Yes, he brought up the fingernail shop, which is really, really stereotypical. Very stereotypical, right? It's pretty obvious, don't you think? What's your first clue about who An Tran is? Come on. What's your first clue? Let me read it again. I'm not going to give you the answer right away. I want you to think of it, the answer. It's common practice for the staff at the Forest Service to invite employees to lunch to get acquainted with them. A Vietnam American named An Tran accepted the invitation and joined a group of employees for lunch. What's your first clue here? It said he's a Vietnamese American. He's an American. The assumption was that he was from Vietnam. That was the assumption. You see how that perception can slip under your skin there and you're not aware of it? That first impression? See how powerful that is? It just slips past you. You don't think about it. But it's right there. He's a Vietnamese American. Later on, do you know, let me just cut to the chase. When An came back, after he calmed down, he told Dan and the other guy, he said, thanks for trying to make me feel comfortable. But he said, I don't even speak Vietnamese. You know, I'm 5th generation. I like hip hop, man. I'm from LA. What does that tell you? They missed the boat, you know? So take a step back and say, Vietnamese, American. Oh, American, oh, okay. And then treat him like any other person. It's simple. Now, here's the other side of that. You got to think about this. What was the intent of the two guys?
Make him feel included.
Yes. They were trying their best to make you feel welcome. There was no malice intent here. They did the best they could with their stereotypical point of view. How many people have you run into like that? They mean well, but they stumble all over their first impression. All the time. We don't want you to do that when you become a professional. It's embarrassing. It destroys your company brand. They'll say, what's your name?
Brandon.
They'll say, Brandon said this. Brandon represents, what's your career goal?
Criminal justice.
Brandon said this, and that represents that Washington State or Idaho juvenile system or criminal system is all screwed up. they'll take his mistake and paint the whole judicial system the same way. When you become a professional, you represent the entire company, not just you. You have to be careful about how you deal with people on just a pedestrian basis. Okay, take a step back before you answer questions. Take a deep breath. Okay, what are my first impressions here? Is he from Vietnam? Ask him. What was the first question I asked you this morning, earlier? Can anybody remember the first question I asked you? Tell me about yourself. Who are you? Don't lead with, I think I know Native Americans. By the way, I'm part Cherokee. Who cares? What if I met you and I said, well, I'm 1/16 German. Hi, I'm Jeff Guillory. How does that sound? Sounds a little silly, doesn't it? But how many people do that? They'll introduce themselves to Native Americans and say, how you doing? I'm part Cherokee. Natives laugh at that. So take a deep breath, step back, and say, tell us about yourself. Tell us, I'll tell you about me, but what do you like to do? What are your hobbies? What things do you like to do? It's okay. I mean, you have a great intent, but sometimes it can get us in trouble. 5 more minutes here. Let me pick one more. And I need to cover this piece because it's really important. The athletic department is having a picnic in a local park as a way of getting acquainted with new student athletes and their parents. Many employees show up with their parents, which includes small children. During introductions of the parents, a same-sex couple described themselves as the parents of one of the athletes. When one of the employees heard the introduction, he became visibly angry, gathered his family, and left the picnic. At work the next day, he was overheard telling other employees that the couple had no right to expose his children to that kind of lifestyle without his permission, and it shouldn't have happened. You organized the picnic. It's your responsibility to resolve this. It's on you. You represent Lewis Clark State College. You put that picnic on, and this happened. President, the provost come to you. So we need to resolve this. What do you do? Let's go. I'm not going to give you time to think about this. This is right on top of your head. Let's go. Yeah.
Well, since it was an employee of the college, you probably want to apologize to the student whose parents it was, because that probably would make the student uncomfortable.
Why is it so important? You're absolutely right. Why is it so important to apologize first? Why is that critical?
You recognize that a mistake was made?
Recognize that we made a mistake. Who made the mistake? Not LCSC,
An employee.
that employee. You want to get the point across that that was his or her opinion, not the opinion of the school. Does that make sense? Apologies go a long way because that couple are message carriers. They'll leave that picnic and they'll tell everybody they can find how they were treated by Lewis Clark State College. Not that person. They'll attack your brand. Back to the brand again. Okay. It's important to apologize first. What's next? What do you do next? Come on.
People online too.
Talk to the employee or employee.
Okay.
Anybody online?
Everybody online.
Provide policy to the staff.
Provide policy to the staff. Yes. All right. Once you've apologized, made them feel welcome again. You have a second issue. And this is a little more advanced because now I'm putting you in a manager's position. You probably don't know the answer, but I'm just interested in those of you who can come up with an answer where there is no answer. You have the second issue, separate from the picnic, actually. What is it? Yeah.
Some companies have a zero discrimination policies that really fire.
Okay, discrimination policy, examine that, yes, what else?
The employee, by doing that, probably broke some form of policy that the college has for its employees. So you would have to have a meeting with that employee to address what they've done. And there would need to be some form of action that you take, whether it's they have to go take a course on being inclusive or whatever, so that that kind of situation doesn't happen again.
Are you in HR? You sound like you're in HR. That's exactly the truth. You have two separate issues. You have a job-related issue where an employee goes in and creates a hostile work environment by talking to other employees about this issue, spreading their opinion, negative opinion, their own opinion about this couple. That violates a university or a college policy about treatment of people, the same sex or whomever, and that has to be dealt with. So two separate issues. An issue of discrimination and an issue of employees being out of line. It's called dissemination of a hostile work, creating a hostile work environment. You got to quell that. If you have a list of job expectations, that's going to be on that list. How to deal with other people, how to relate to people. Okay. Very good.
And Jeff, we probably have time for just one more closing statement. Do you have a word of wisdom? Because I know they need to run off and we have another
Yeah, you guys
class
have to
coming
go.
in.
I don't have any
So-
words of wisdom. All I can say is, I hope this got your engine going, piqued your curiosity, and made you more interested in the type of work that you'll be doing and how important this is to your career path. It's critical. When you leave this room and you graduate, you're going to meet this same person, just like me, in the interview office. And they're going to ask you questions. And please, don't stop studying here. Do your research on a business level, how to deal with people from different cultural backgrounds, how to deal with them professionally. All right? So you've been a great group.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming. I know we have people who are saying thank you on the screen.
Thank you, guys.
Bill said,
Thank you,
good to
guys.
listen to you again, my friend. Always a pleasure. I love how you challenge and teach us and lead us. So I ditto Bill's
Thank you, Bill.
wisdom.
Bill's my
Yes.
brother.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. This was just lovely. Thank you, class. I really, really appreciate your participation. Good job.
Thanks for having me, guys.
That was lovely. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and sign us out. Have a wonderful day.